Have you noticed it? I truly apologized to her, and I'm sorry. I was thinking about what I had unintentionally observed. She appeared on the verge of tears, and I felt terrible for her. Unfortunately, though, the mental image would not go away. I was profoundly affected by what I had saw of her. Taylor Mason is my name. Like any newcomer, I entered the workforce after graduating from college. In addition to the fact that my employer was an avid athlete, I still had a lot to learn at work. I was frequently reprimanded for making the same errors every day. Mason, you've made yet another egregious mistake. How often does this happen now? I was sorry. I was the worst performing member among my peers. I had always been bad at managing multiple tasks, which led to me making more mistakes when there was a lot to do. I was constantly getting yelled at work, and I couldn't help but sigh, wondering how things came to this. In university, all I had to do was understand the lecture content, so my grades were good. I thought I'd be able to manage in the real world too, but I was wrong. In reality, I was just a bottom-tier employee who kept making mistakes, and I was starting to despise myself. One day, carrying all these feelings, I bought a microwave dinner from a convenience store on my way home from work. I simply didn't have the energy to cook for myself. I usually got home late at night, and since I lived in a small apartment, there was rarely anyone around. As usual, I opened my apartment door, and that's when it happened. Meow. A cat came up to me. Its fur was too clean for a stray, and the cat seemed used to people. This apartment allowed pets, so it might belong to someone. But where did it come from? As I was wondering about this, the cat sauntered into my apartment through the open door. Hey, you can't just go in. Fluffy, has Fluffy come back? Hearing the cat's meow, my neighbor burst out of her door. I turned to look. She was a woman, probably in her early 20s, and she had rushed out in a worn-out sports bra. I was speechless. She had come out in such a hurry that she was barefoot, and she was showing so much skin that I panicked for a moment, thinking she was naked. When she saw that her cat had entered my apartment, she said, "I'm sorry, that's my cat." Oh dear, she realized that she was only in her underwear and turned her face bright red. "I'm sorry, that's my cat. I'll get him out right away." With that, she rushed back into her apartment, returning in about 30 seconds. She was clearly just wearing a hoodie over her sports bra. I didn't want the cat to get hurt inside my apartment, but I was also hesitant to invite a woman into my place at night. So I said, "I'll try to catch the cat. Just wait here," and attempted to catch the cat, but I couldn't. Is it always hard to catch a cat? Left with no other choice, I had to ask the woman to come inside and catch the cat herself. The cat didn't resist when the woman tried to catch it. It just went with the flow. "I'm sorry for the trouble. I'll make it up to you another day," she said, and with that, she left, as it was getting late. Well, she was dressed quite oddly. The next Saturday, the woman came to visit, bringing some sweets with her. I led her into the room to check if the cat hadn't broken anything, and we sat down for a cup of tea. Honestly, since I had led her into my room the day before, I didn't resist much. Her name is Julia Roberts. She seemed to be a college student, and from the big shoulder bag she brought, it seemed she probably planned to study somewhere after this. She owned a cat named Fluffy. Actually, yesterday Fluffy went out onto the balcony, and I heard him crying at night, so I rushed out in such a strange outfit. Julia was blushing as she explained. "Oh, Fluffy scratched me up pretty bad. It's even more embarrassing to be seen like this." "Cats can be quite a handful, huh?" I said. "I heard cats scratch everything around them when they need to sharpen their claws, so their clothes get scratched occasionally. But it costs a lot to buy new ones each time, so they wear them when they're not meeting anyone." "I'm really sorry for the trouble," she said. "Don't worry about it. Just take good care of your cat." Julia thanked me again and got up to leave. But at that moment, her shoulder bag fell over, and all the documents inside spilled out. "Are you okay?" I scrambled to gather the papers. She exclaimed, "No, no," and quickly snatched the papers away from me. But I had seen it. The documents were notices of re-examinations from her university, and there were so many of them. The number of re-examinations was so large it made me worry about her credit completion. "Did you see it?" she asked. "Yes, I'm sorry." I apologized sincerely. Julia blushed deeper than when she had been seen in her underwear. Her face was on the verge of tears. "Everyone says it. They say college is a piece of cake if you attend lectures, but it's impossible for me. I'm not smart," she said, overwhelmed with emotion. Julia collapsed right where she stood. It seemed her academic performance was severely poor, to the point where not only graduation, but even progressing to the next grade was in jeopardy. She had always been made fun of for her grades, and it seemed she had developed a complex, or rather, a trauma, about it. "Well, if you want, I could help you with your studies," I offered. No, I went to the same university. I took the same courses you're having re-examinations for." "Really? What a coincidence." Julia was attending the same university I had, so that made her my junior. She quickly took me up on my offer. It seemed she'd tried asking her friends for help with her studies before, but kept making the same mistakes, and they had given up on her. "Well, I did have good grades in university, and depending on the subject, there are tips and tricks. Maybe if I taught her those, she might just make it." So, we decided to have a study session every Saturday. After seeing the sheer amount of re-exams she was facing, I was quite worried and couldn't get it off my mind. I finished work and bought dinner on the way home, so I got home a bit late. I had planned to take a break on Saturday, but it turned out that Julia had an imagination that far exceeded my expectations. She was constantly coming up with answers that I had no idea how she arrived at. Honestly, our weekly study sessions were not enough, so I decided to add additional study sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Julia's house. This was also because Julia suggested, "Let me cook dinner as a thank you for the study sessions." Teaching someone is also a way of studying for yourself, so I made an effort to explain the problems that Julia seemed to have difficulty with in a way that was easy to understand. Julia seemed to be studying hard in her own way and gradually improved her grades. As for me, I started to take more notice of my surroundings, and my minor mistakes decreased. The number of days I could get through without being shouted at increased, and there were fewer hard times at work. Then, 6 months later, I did it. I don't have any resits anymore. Finally, Julia was freed from the hell of resits. Julia was able to understand the lectures after 6 months of study, and she no longer needed my help. It felt a little lonely, but I should be genuinely happy for her growth. "Well done, you worked really hard. If you don't understand something, tell me, okay?" "Yes, thank you." The study meetings ended with that, but the habit of meeting for half a year didn't just disappear. I still had the chance to eat Julia's dinners occasionally, and I also invited her for meals. We also talked about things like what kind of company to work for and other life advice. A few months passed like this, and Julia was able to move up a grade. I was thinking of giving her a present to celebrate her advancement. Just as I was thinking about this while heading to work, I noticed something on my desk. It was a document, but not just any document. It was a personnel change, and I'm the assistant to the president. I was dumbfounded by the document informing me of an unexpected personnel change. Suddenly, my boss patted my shoulder, and I jumped. "The president is calling for you. Follow me," he said. My heart was about to jump out of my chest. What did I do? I desperately tried to remember, but I couldn't think of anything. I made my way to the president's office with a stiff body. There were guests in the president's office, besides the president. It seemed that I had been called to the president's office because these guests wanted to see me. "Sorry for calling you all of a sudden. These are the owners of Robert's Sake, our business partners, the president introduced. I bowed my head. Wait, Roberts? That's the same surname as Julia. What a coincidence, I thought. As I sat on the sofa as directed, the Roberts couple smiled at me. Nice to meet you. We are from Robert's sake. No, let's leave the title aside. We came here as parents to thank you and ask you for a favor, the president of Roberts said to me. I was completely lost for words and just stared blankly. Actually, the Julia you've been tutoring is our daughter. We'd heard that she was able to move up a grade thanks to your help. Thank you so much. No, it was all thanks to Julia's efforts that she was able to move up a grade, I replied. So it turned out that Julia was the president's daughter. I had no idea. I was just surprised. According to Mr. Sun, the CEO, Julia had her pride and wanted to fend for herself without depending on her parents. It seemed that she started living on her own because of this. I heard about you from my daughter. I wanted to express my gratitude for everything you've done for her, and I apologize for the inconvenience, but would you please continue to help her with her studies? He asked. With these words, both the CEO and his wife bowed deeply in thanks. What? Please, lift your heads, I protested. Being shown such respect by the CEO, a man like me, just an ordinary employee, felt quite awkward. After a few insistences, they finally raised their heads. Apparently, Julia had always had bad grades since she was young. She had received tutoring from various people, but it seemed the only one who could make a real difference was me. Julia trusted me, and the ridiculous personnel change that made me the CEO's secretary happened so that it would be easier for me to adjust my work schedule. Our CEO was quite capable, so he didn't need anyone's permission to allow me to go to Julia's place at any time. In other words, I didn't have any right to refuse, but why did the CEO go to such lengths? Was it simply because he valued this business relationship that much? Actually, we've been friends since we were kids, you know. The so-called best buddies. I've known Julia since she was a little girl, and I've been as troubled as anyone else by her post-academic performance, he revealed. Because I seemed puzzled, the CEO was kind enough to explain our relationship. Apparently, when Julia was in high school, the CEO used to supervise her studies. She managed to pass her college entrance exams, but it seems she ended up in a sort of remedial hell. Of course, my salary remained the same even though my department had changed, so it's a win-win situation for me, or so it should be. However, this lack of a right to refuse showed me the frightening power that adults with authority hold. And so it was decided that I would be taking care of Julia, approved by both our parents and the company. Julia's academic performance had improved slightly, but I couldn't let my guard down. She seemed to have received a failing grade in a new course she started right after advancing to the next grade. Your assistance again would be much appreciated, the CEO said. Likewise, I responded. Julia looked a bit embarrassed, but I felt rather glad to have this connection with her in this way. I supported Julia, and sometimes she supported me. Before I knew it, Julia became my wife. You never know what life has in store for you. Who would have thought that the college girl I saw in her underwear the first time we met would become my wife? But it seems Julia is still hung up on the mountain of remedial novices, more so than the fact that I saw her in her underwear. Playfully, she tells me to take responsibility for that time, as she asks me to help her study. However, the studying she refers to now is not academic learning, but rather business manners and other basic knowledge for working adults. The CEO was also delighted. Who would have thought that Julia would grow so much? She's an amazing person who single-handedly started the company and continues to grow it, overcoming challenges even the CEO once struggled with. I still don't know about Julia's past grades, but it seems it's better not to know. That's how I'm happily living my life now. But when I really think about it, the catalyst for me discovering Julia's retake notices was when Fluffy wandered into my room. In that sense, I should really be thankful to Fluffy for dropping by my room. Meow. The Cupid of our love spent another day curled up under the sunshine. Man, that was a close call. The night my wife told me she wanted a divorce. By tomorrow, we won't be husband and wife anymore. Thinking about that, I can't help but feel regretful. My name is Robert Johnson, 50 years old. I've lived for half a century, but right. I am undoubtedly facing the biggest crisis of my life. Right in front of me, on the familiar living room table, is a divorce paper. All the blanks where my wife Catherine is supposed to fill out are already filled in. She sprung the news of the divorce on me one morning after we'd shared 23 years of life together. At first, I thought I must be dreaming or still half asleep. What is this? Some kind of joke. Do I look like I'm joking? Catherine replied, her face serious. She meant it. The moment I realized that, I panicked because I couldn't understand why she'd want a divorce. Of course, I love Catherine and I haven't cheated on her. It doesn't seem like she's found someone else either. Catherine, crying softly, started to explain the situation. The reason for the divorce was the relationship with my mom. I knew that there was a problem with my mother. My mom had always had a grudge against Catherine because she only had a high school diploma. You should go to college. High school grads can't get good jobs, and they lack common sense. You'll only end up suffering if you're with them. This had been my mom's mantra for as long as I can remember. She raised me as a single mother and even put me through college. My high school grad dad left us for another woman, and that's why she hated high school grads. Of course, there's some truth to that, but there are people without common sense in the world, whether they are college or high school graduates. In Catherine's case, she lost her parents early on and had to start working right after high school to support herself. She's very responsible, and I've never found her to be unreasonable. I managed to convince my mom to agree to our marriage, and I've stepped in a few times to mediate their disputes. But it seems my mom has been badmouthing Catherine behind my back. Catherine has been enduring all of this. As I've said before, I was raised by a single parent, and the only relative Catherine could rely on was my mom. Now that our daughter, Lily, is 23 years old and getting married this year, Catherine brought up the subject of divorce. Your mother will be attending the wedding, right? Catherine asked. You know, your mother told me if you come, it'll be a hassle for Lily. Don't come to the ceremony. I never thought I'd be told not to attend my own daughter's wedding. I've put up with this for so long, but I can't take it anymore. I can't live with your mother anymore, and I don't like it. You didn't help me. I can't believe you. So, you're saying you hate me now? In my shock, I blurted out some unnecessary words with a trembling voice. Catherine clearly stated, I don't know right now, but I do hate your mother. Then she got up and ran crying into our bedroom. I'm ashamed to say I was too shocked to move. I thought I was doing my part to keep my mom from hurting Catherine, but it wasn't enough. I had thought I was helping, but I failed to notice the strain on Catherine as she bore the weight of it all. My mind was a complete mess. I couldn't understand anything. The only thing I did understand was that Catherine was determined. I wonder how much time has passed. Finally, regaining some composure, I dialed my mother's number. I needed to verify the facts. But before I could even ask, I blurted out, You've been harassing my wife, haven't you? It's wrong to be so harsh on Catherine. To keep the conversation calm, I started with casual chitchat and tried to subtly probe her thoughts on Catherine. However, all she said was, Catherine seems a bit out of touch. I wish she'd pull herself together. She didn't make any further comments about Catherine. Whether she was skillfully hiding something or just oblivious, I couldn't figure it out over the phone. What should I do? I was wrecking my brain while staring at the divorce papers. Dad, are you okay? It was Lily who had approached me. I quickly tried to hide the divorce papers, but she said, So, Mom has finally made up her mind. Huh. It seemed like she had already figured out what was happening. Finally, did you know that Catherine wanted a divorce? She asked. She didn't tell me directly, but I knew she'd been enduring a lot. Apparently, Lily had been recording my mother's harassment on her phone and seemed willing to let me hear it. She raised the volume to the max. Catherine, haven't you cleaned again? You're a stay-at-home mom. You should do it every day. Seriously, you're hopeless. It seemed like my mother had suddenly said to Catherine when she visited. I'm sorry, Lily has a fever, so I thought it'd be better to keep the noise down. Well, that's what happens when you live in a dirty environment. This just shows the importance of daily cleaning. Listening to this, I felt genuinely disgusted. While what she said wasn't entirely wrong, there was an irritating nagging, an unpleasant feel to it. Another recording started with my mother yelling at Catherine as she was preparing dinner. What's with this bland food? Are you serving such awful meals to Johnson and Lily? Well, isn't it better to have less salt? It's healthier. Lily, indeed, too much salt is bad, but too little is just as harmful. This can wreck your health. I recall my mother visiting every 3 to 4 days. I can't believe Catherine had to put up with such constant nagging, at least twice a week. As I stood there in shock, Lily sighed and said, Mom has been enduring this all along. She loves you, Dad, and she knew how much you valued Grandma. But I'm sorry, I really hate Grandma. I don't want her at my wedding. Well, that makes sense. Even I would want to avoid someone as nagging as this in my workplace. But while you can avoid or quit your job to escape such a situation, you can't do the same with your in-laws. I permitted my mother to frequently visit, thinking she was happy about her first grandchild and could be of help to Catherine. However, if such conversations occurred repeatedly, I can understand why Catherine would want to leave. There were several instances of overstepping that I reprimanded my mother for, and I thought she had improved. But the truth was, I couldn't protect the person I loved. I felt extremely regretful and sad. If making Catherine unhappy is inevitable, maybe it's better if we part ways. I muttered under my breath, and at this, Lily's expression hardened. What did you promise, Dad? At her words, I tilted my head in confusion, only to see Lily's expression grow even more stern. I might be a woman, but I want to support my future husband forever. You promised to protect me for the rest of your life. You even told her the same thing when you met her, didn't you? Aren't you supposed to protect Mom too? Mom is also at fault here. You don't understand unless things are spelled out for you. Communication is so important, really. Right now, Mom has no allies. Dad, think about it. Lily said this calmly, then left the room. Her retreating figure overlapped with that of Catherine's. When I decided to marry Catherine, I resolved to protect her at all costs. But now Catherine is trying to distance herself from me. She's crumbling, trying to isolate herself. I stood up and took out the wedding ring that had been tucked away in the back of the dresser. We had kept it safe so as not to lose it during our busy work and parenting lives. It had cost 3 months of my salary at the time. Even though we hadn't worn it in a long time, the 2 rings retained their original shine and were still as beautiful as ever. The image of Catherine walking down the aisle with this ring on, I could never forget. Still unable to accept the idea of divorce, I decided to have another discussion with Catherine. I headed to the bedroom. Upon entering, I found Catherine sitting on the bed with an awkward expression. Do you have a moment to talk? I suggested in a calm voice. Catherine, probably feeling guilty about suddenly pushing for divorce, agreed to talk. I started by apologizing to her first, with such intensity that it was as if I was ready to get down on my knees and beg. I'm so sorry about what my parents did. I'm sorry I didn't notice. You must have been considerate of me because I lost a parent. When I looked up, Catherine had a complicated expression. Do you really want to divorce me, Catherine? I asked, my voice shaking. If Catherine was adamant about it, I couldn't force her to stay. But upon hearing this, Catherine started crying again. I don't want to divorce you either, but it's impossible. I've reached my limit, she shouted, bearing her emotions. I'm not good at cleaning, and no matter how hard I try in my own way, I'm always criticized and talked about as if I'm a failure. It's unbearable. I even purposely made my food bland for your elderly mother, considering her age, but she doesn't notice it. No matter how much I hint at it, if I state it clearly, I'm accused of not showing respect to elders. Catherine's screams continued for some time as her long-accumulated frustrations exploded. By the time she finished talking and calmed down, she was bowed down as if burned out. I feel pathetic for not noticing the change in Catherine until it got this bad. I'm sorry. I promised to make you happy. I swore to do so when I gave this to you. I'm sorry for making you endure all this. I took out the ring. Seeing this, Catherine's eyes widened. You are not a failure. You're my wonderful wife, I said. Right after we got married, you gave birth to our daughter, Lily. I appreciate just that. But when I was fledgling with the unfamiliar child rearing, you slapped me on the ass and scolded me, pull yourself together. You said that. That really hit home. But because I was so careless, I lost my wedding ring and caused a big commotion. Lily was crying a lot at night, and I dropped the ring while walking around the house holding her. I looked for it everywhere. It ended up being left on the living room table. That was pathetic. I remember participating in the relay race with Lily at the elementary school field day and falling down hard. Everyone laughed. Oh yeah, I remember that happened. They didn't have to laugh that much, did they? I had never seen anyone do a full rotation in the air and fall. You became a legend at the elementary school. As we reminisced while looking at the ring, a small smile returned to Catherine's face. For Catherine, our family memories have not turned into painful things when she looks back. That alone made me feel at ease. Right now, in Catherine's heart, the desire to be away from me is stronger than those memories. I was stupid not to notice that she was pushed so far. I handed Catherine the divorce paper. I know it's presumptuous, but I swore to God to protect you. Please, can you give me another chance? If it doesn't turn out to be the best outcome for you, you can submit this at any time. My name and signature are already on the divorce paper. If this is submitted, Catherine and I will become strangers. But if you could give me another chance, would you accept this ring again? I knelt down and offered the ring to Catherine. This is the pose I took when I proposed to Catherine. It seemed like Catherine remembered that too. Silence followed for a while. The silence, which felt incredibly long to me, eventually ended. I will trust you just this one more time, but this is really the last time, she said. She held out her hand. It seemed like a reluctant response, as if she had lost a battle of wills with me. Whether it was out of mercy or pity, it didn't matter. The fact remains that I've been given another chance. When I put the ring on Catherine's finger, it just barely fit. I couldn't help but laugh. It barely made it, and my eyes began to well up. That's right. We've been together for so long, long enough to change the shape of our hands. I don't want it to end here. The next day, I headed over to my mother's place. Mom, I'm going to be honest with you. I heard everything you said to Catherine. Lily recorded it. She doesn't want you at her wedding, I said. My mother looked truly shocked. I'm indebted to her for raising me, but the people I've sworn to protect for life are not my parents. They are Catherine and Lily. Did you feel shocked just now? I asked. That's what you did to Catherine. Why did you do that to her? Just because she only finished high school? Just because she's a high school graduate, you deny all of her worth? You never listen to anyone when you've set your mind to something, and it's only gotten worse as you've aged. If this continues, I can't let you meet my family anymore. As I said this sternly, Mom dropped her head, and in a feeble voice, as though squeezing the words out, she began to speak. You might not believe me, but I was truly happy when Catherine came into our family. It felt like I had a daughter of my own. I wanted her to learn my way of doing things, which is why I think I was strict with her. She didn't know many things, and I thought she'd embarrass herself if she was just left to her own devices. I was hard on her, because she lost her parents and didn't have a chance to learn. It's natural she couldn't do many things, but I only kept criticizing her. I know, as her mother-in-law, she couldn't voice her opinions. Why couldn't I be more kind to her? According to my mother, the comment about not attending the wedding was actually a harsh way of saying that she was worried Catherine wouldn't be able to handle the manners and etiquette of such events. Even I'm not perfect at handling these traditional customs, she said. The harsh treatment was also partly due to neighbors commenting on Catherine's lack of etiquette. It seems the initial trigger was my mother's desire to protect Catherine, whom she saw as her own daughter, from being talked about poorly. I thought, that's just like my perfectionist mother. But regardless of my mother's intentions, the recorded conversations were unforgivable. I'm really sorry if my precious girl left me, my mother said, her hands covering her face, visibly shaken. It was the first time I'd seen my always assertive mother like this. I informed Catherine and Lily what had happened that day when I got home. Although they both had complex facial expressions, we decided that going forward, we would make an effort to comprehend and become closer. My mother discovered the importance of observing and the necessity of limiting her speech. Our friendship got better after she began to filter remarks through me. She was able to attend Lily's wedding because of the reconciliation. Lily's wedding is also today. I'm going down the aisle with Lily, who looks a lot like Catherine. Lily, looking very joyful just before the wedding begins. Catherine and I can't help but cry when we see Lily like that. The rings we used to make our vows of love 23 years ago were silently sparkling on our fingers as we wiped away each other's tears.